Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us again. I'm delighted today to be joined by Miles Hawley and Simon Browning from Recipe Design, who have just become mission partners. They're based here in the UK. Hello, guys. Nice to see you.
Good morning.
Morning,
nice
Paul.
to see you too.
Great. Well, thank you very much for becoming mission partners. We really appreciate it. And I know you've had some experience working with Mission previously with the team at Solaris. But of course, the broader group might not necessarily know you guys so well, and certainly some of our international partners won't know you yet, but we're hoping to change that. So I was wondering if you could maybe tell us a little bit about Recipe, because I've seen the website and you guys do some wonderful work, and you cover two particular areas, but I'll let you explain rather than me waffle on and get it wrong.
Cool, thanks. Shall I start, Simon? You can chip in. Yeah, we're what we call a strategic design agency, but myself and Simon have a background in product, and that's where the agency sort of grew out from. But we've expanded into lots of other areas. We call it the sort of brand ecosystem. So a lot of the work we do is product focused, but we then move into sort of packaging, comms, training tools, etc., etc. The two areas you mentioned that we sort of specialize in are healthcare, which is a particular expertise of mine, and consumer, which is more Simon's bag. But so those are obviously very big areas. The interesting area that we see which emerges from those is sort of the crossover of the two, which we call wellness, where we've got consumer brands trying to be sort of efficacious and act like healthcare companies, and we've got healthcare companies trying to get into the domestic space. So those areas are where we operate. We use a proprietary tool that we call meaning-centered design, which we have basically developed over the last 20 years, really. It originated in the previous agency, but we've developed it and honed it at Recipe, where we're using social science, we're using semiotics, discourse analysis, design research, ethnography, combination of tools to really understand what things mean. And that sounds really straightforward, doesn't it? You know, what does something mean? But it's massively important. If you can identify what something should mean or could mean, you can then, so that's our strategic offer. We can then use the design team to provide solutions to that meaning or create that meaning. And that could be, again, across the ecosystem, could be product, packaging, comms, etc. So that's kind of the ethos of and the way we're set up.
I think that's also a reflection of our approach, Miles, over the years. You know, you and I have always worked well together because we've had an ethos that's been about applying design in a meaningful way. We come from a product background, and obviously a lot of our contemporaries were very strong stylistically. And while we've always really, striven to deliver beautiful work, we believe that every last aspect of the proposition should be justified or grounded in what we call a proprietary insight. So we try and find those areas of meaning for a client that they can take advantage of, and then we can apply that insight across every touch point from product, communications, packaging, and so on.
Yeah, I think lots of people, when we talk about meaning-centered design, we ask them if they've heard of human-centered design, which a lot of people have. If you think about that and times it by 10 in terms of its rigor and its depth, it's not just looking at humans, it's the environment, it's the economic situation, it's the geography, it's, it covers a lot more elements that create meaning. So we go extremely deep, it's extremely rigorous, and then the results are, useful and understandable. And if the client, it's sometimes complex, but we bring the client along with us at various different levels. They can get deep and dirty in the detail, or we'll provide them sort of headline. But if they understand what we mean by meaning, then they come along with the journey. That's a stupid phrase, isn't it? They become they get involved and they understand what meaning is beyond, as I say, sort of human-centered design.
I think actually just one important point to anyone watching this from a creative perspective will understand the subjectivity that we all have to kind of deal with. And I think that the process we've developed has helped us remove a certain degree of the subjectivity and help to bolster a proposition or a recommendation that we make to clients. And our experience is that usually the business finds it easier to invest in, you know, the recommendations that we're making because of the rigor that sits behind that recommendation and the evidence that we're able to bring to bear as to why it's the right thing to do.
I think that's a really interesting point, because having worked in design myself for a little while, many years ago, of course, it actually and research to a certain extent, the being able to say we're doing it this way because, and here's the evidence, is really important. Yeah. And I guess in the areas that you're playing in, and you talk about wellness, because it's that crossover now where, you know, you've got a lot of sort of self-diagnostic equipment and things like that, which you're also, you know, self-administered health and wellness stuff. You know, this is all the more important because you need to understand usage, and then of course there's, as you talk about, human-centric design as well, and it flows naturally from there, but it's a much deeper approach that you're taking.
Yeah, and I think because of the depth, I mean, clearly we're working on programs that are, you know, near term. You're looking at sort of, you know, 1, 2, 3 years in terms of getting to market. But I think we can look beyond that. You know, we've done work with Wrigley, for example, where we're looking 15, 20 years ahead. Wow. So the depth of the rigor enables you to sort of project, you know, what the future might hold in a more meaningful and rigorous manner than you would have done before. I've been at lots of other agencies where they dabble in it. Great, but this goes super deep.
I want to ask you, actually, where did you both meet? Because you sort of hinted there, you both come from this sort of product orientated background, but what's the sort of genesis of the business and the partnership that you two have that you can explain to us?
We met about 20 years ago, was it, Simon? We actually met at a big UK product agency. It was very engineering based. It was quite big. It was sort of 70, 80 people. I joined slightly earlier, as I actually joined as head of packaging, but soon moved into sort of the creative director role, overseeing product. And then Simon joined, and that's actually where I met 2 other people, and we got introduced to design research. I got introduced to semiotics, and that's when we started to, you know, the idea of meaning-centered design. It wasn't called that at the time. It was just sort of disparate sort of methodologies began to bubble up, and we started to use that. So that's where we met.
Okay. And so I mean, we were talking before we started the interview. You've just moved the business, and now you're remote. How many people are you, and what's the sort of shape of the business, so people watching this can get a feel for you?
So we're a small agency. We're 10. Yep. It's been more, it's been slightly less, but we're currently 10. And it's what's important here is it's split 50-50 between strategy team and the design team. That in itself is unusual. Most agencies either major on, you know, they're a design agency with a bit of research and strategy, or vice versa. But the meaning-centered design ethos requires 50% strategy, but we want to use that strategy and implement it, hence this sort of 50-50 split. So on the strategic side, yes, semioticians, ethnographers, researchers, etc. On the design side, product designers, brand designers, packaging designers, and that's how we're kind of set up.
But that core team is a senior team. And so every one of the team are well versed in all of the tools and techniques that sit either side of that divide. So our researchers and strategists are design trained, and they understand how their insights will be applied, and they can sort of feed into the creative process as it moves downstream. And similarly, the designers are well versed in research techniques and able to interpret data or kind of bring a story to life that the researchers are trying to tell. And that's a really important sort of part of the way we set ourselves up. Senior collective, supported outside of that team by experts and specialists that Miles and I have had in our network, and the other seniors have had in our network for years. And because it is a proprietary process, it's important that everyone involved understands what that process looks like.
Yeah, sure. And I'm guessing, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that, I mean, given the process and the way that you were any of our colleagues to get you involved in something, I mean, really the earlier the better. So you're sort of in at the start, so you can shape the way this goes, is probably the preferred method of being involved, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. We work right across, from pre-brief. Lots of our companies come to us with, we're not quite sure what to do next, or we've got a technology we don't know how to implement, or what we should do with it. So we can start at the seed of an idea. We quite often work on brands or products that have been in the market but need a refresh because of the competition, or the market has changed. And we do a lot of future casting where we're looking, as I mentioned before, looking 3, 5, 10 years out. I think because we are product designers, we've got a very good handle on how things are made. So the commercial angle of it is hugely important to us. Hence the setup, which I mentioned earlier. We want stuff to get to market. We're not engineers, but we can talk that talk. So we're extremely good at the front end, right through to, talking to tool makers and engineers and people that are actually physically putting this stuff into the market. So we cover that whole range.
And I mean, you mentioned that you have this sort of duality of focus, and this sort of comes together within wellness. So what type of clients, I mean, within reason the names that you might be able to share with us, are you working with or have worked with, just to give us a sort of feel for the space that you play in?
I mean, in terms of wellness, that falls within what we would call home or the consumer lifestyle sector. So you'll find examples of our work in that area with Braun, where we've worked in bringing that brand back into the audio sector after 30 years away, and we're currently working with them in the wellness space in an area I can't talk about today, but we'll be able to next month. So yeah, very well recognized brand, obviously with very, very strong design principles, but benefiting from our approach in terms of positioning them effectively. Similarly, Kenwood in kitchen, helping them to understand the future of food preparation and consumption, for example, which again is a sort of a future casting exercise, but looks at the technological challenges involved in doing that and informing their advanced development roadmap. And also, again, just off the top of my head, Bang & Olufsen, a very desirable brand to be involved with, working with them out of their HQ to develop their kind of strategic approach to the market over a number of years after a significant change at board level. So a nice mix of strategy and design in that lot. But there are quite a few case studies available on our website that people can look at. And my personal interest in that space would be beyond those companies that are well-established brands that have been around for years, the startups and scale-ups that are coming into that wellness space currently that are, people like Co in cleaning, Fussy in deodorants, Grinding coffee, Harry Shave, challenging, those big multinational companies with propositions that are far more consumer centric, personalized, offer real value, but also making a sort of a positive impact on the planet. And I think that's an important component of wellness now.
I think another area which we haven't really talked about, which we spend a reasonable amount, is sort of FMCG or OTC healthcare, as I might call it. So one of our big clients is Galderma Skincare. We've worked for them for the last 12 years. Well, very early clients, and then we've grown that account, looking after some of their major brands across, their global brands. Really, moving the idea of skincare into wellness, expanding their portfolio, but also teaching them how to talk about the brands and then expressing it through their packaging, comms, both internal and external. That's another good example of a company that had a very limited portfolio at the beginning and was very skincare, and now we're looking at the broader picture and the way that you communicate that to the customer, who they're becoming more savvy, aren't they, in terms of what these benefits these things can bring.
Of course, Miles talked earlier about that convergence piece where healthcare and the consumer space are kind of coming together in this sort of wellness opportunity, which has been around for a while, but is continues to grow quickly. And I had a great experience with Cola Company, where I was actually leading design within that business, and working back with our agency at that point in time to use meaning-centered design to help it navigate this sort of changing that was happening in kitchen and bath. I mean, essentially, Kohler Company was a plumbing business concerned with brass castings that delivered water in different ways, and it really wanted to sort of round out its proposition and be recognised not as a plumbing brand but as a lifestyle brand, and really keen to kind of harness digital technologies and understand how the experience of showering and bathing, for example, could enhance your feeling of personal well-being. And we use meaning centre design at both a local level to sort of decode the UK market, where it's had market-leading brands delivering taps and showers and other sort of kitchen and bath products. But in decoding that particular kind of category, we were able to develop a sort of a series or a whole portfolio of products that informed the roadmap for the next 5 years. And the great thing about it was that year on year, the business won design awards, it won the Queen's Award for Enterprise, really tangible outcomes that really stemmed from this different way of kind of defining what was the fuzzy front end for that business. And the process was then taken on board at a global level. And this was some years ago. We're probably talking about 8-9 years ago now. But that process, those strategic frameworks that we created then, continue to be used to this day and affect everything from the product definition all the way through the process to naming and communications as well, which for an organization of that size is quite something. So, I think we really enjoy affecting businesses that have got kind of global reach, but have very strong kind of local presences as well, where we can start.
I mean, that's testament to a good foundation, of course, if you've managed to keep the longevity that you've built into that. It was an interesting point that you made about local to global, because sort of certainly in my experience, very often there's a perception of the quality of UK-based design, perhaps to other parts of the world, and for certain markets, it's perceived as a must-have. So I'm guessing that a good degree of your work has an international element to it at some point somewhere along the line.
Yeah, I mean, I think roughly speaking, 50% of the work we do is in the UK. Sort of 25% in Europe, across Europe, and the remaining 25% in the US. That's kind of the current split. But I mean, we've worked really everywhere. I mean, literally, you name a place, we've been there. So it can be, we work for massive global corporates right down to startups that have got the seed of an idea and don't know what to do next. So that's the beauty of sort of the meaning centered design approach. It can be applied at any scale to any subject matter. It's not, it's not constrained. You can't just use it here or there. It literally can be applied to anything, which causes its own problems in terms of an agency and where you focus. Which is why we've got these two bubbles, and we do just try and stick to those geographies. But it's a massively flexible tool.
Yeah, and again, I think the startup angle is also quite interesting, of course, because it's not everybody's cup of tea working with startups. For all of the reasons we know. But I mean, as you said, if you have that capability, you have that experience, that's a tremendously useful skill and to offer to bring. And I was going to ask you, but I think you probably answered it in a kind of a way, which is sort of, is there a dream client that you guys would love to work on, or is it a sector or something that you think we need to be there? That would be great.
Yeah, and in terms of healthcare, we've worked with all the big boys, the Sanofis, the Roches, the Novartis, all that bunch. And the exciting stuff quite often happens with startups.
Yeah. Where
you're seeing something pretty dynamic. You've normally got an individual who's driven, spent their life developing this stuff. But of course, you can't, those come left field at you. I think the most exciting one we've got on the cards at the moment is a company called Owen Mumford. They're actually sort of mid-sized pharmaceutical group. They're the manufacturers of medical devices. They're privately owned. It's sort of family owned, UK based, but they're looking for that next step. Where is the next innovation for that group going to happen? They've got some pretty serious sort of sustainability targets they've got to hit, but they're a small, tight-knit bunch where we're working within sort of R&D possibly across marketing is where the opportunity is. We're at the early stages of this conversation with them, but it's exciting because they're already well established. So their markets are global, but they're UK based. They've got some manufacturing out in the Far East, but yeah, that's exciting because it's dynamic and they're looking for that next level. They also, because I know somebody there who's fairly senior or very senior, they understand the value of meaning-centered design and what that can bring. So, we're set up, I think, hopefully to launch into that business in quite a big way across device, all the things we mentioned before, packaging, trading tools, all the things that they kind of need and want, but moving slightly out of their comfort zone, away from their sort of core business to see what's kind of next for them again over the next 3, 5, 10 years.
Yeah.
There is actually also a dream client that we've been working on for a while that we have actually secured in the last couple of weeks. And I can tell you, Paul, that the name of that client is Bleep. We can't disclose it. We can't disclose it as yet, but it will be news that will break fairly soon. But what's exciting about that is they're global. They have a huge stable of brands, some licensed in fashion, but many are proprietary brands. It's hitherto been an altogether analog category, but smart technology is permeating very quickly, and that opens up all sorts of incredible opportunities for communications and healthcare that again I can't elaborate on, but it is a dream. It's a dream project, and I think that what will also wash out of that is the way in which they provide products and services to their consumer, like a direct-to-consumer proposition, which will be new for them and possibly new in this space as well. So I think we're really, really excited about that. I mean, we've got a really great portfolio of brands that we already work with, but it's good for any studio, isn't it? When you get those altogether new sort of spaces to move into and learn about very quickly. So yeah, we're pretty fired up about that one, and that's going to take care of Q3.
Great. Well, for everyone watching, you kind of didn't sort of hear here, but there you go. We tune back in later.
Help myself, Paul.
Well, I'm intrigued now. We'll have to take this offline, but anyhow, yeah, I guess that was the other question I really wanted to ask you guys, and I ask a lot of people that I talk to because I'm a big believer in there's sort of this cyclic nature of the industry, and there's a few grey hairs here, and we're of a similar sort of age, and I was sort of wondering, yes, as you look at the industry today, what do you think are the challenges that agencies really face? What's going to be the big thing for the next 6 to 12 months, as much as any of us can sort of future gaze?
I mean, it's been a time, hasn't it? Just the last few years, and I mean, just off the top of my head, I'd say the rate of change, continues to be really, really challenging, not just for agencies, but more importantly for the client companies. Every business is really trying to get its head around what's happening and why, and just as those changes are starting to be understood, something shifts again. So I think the challenge for us is to make sure that our offer remains relevant to the challenges that those people are facing, that we continue to empathise with those conditions, and most of all, that we remain agile. And it's something we've always set ourselves up to be, and which is really valued by particularly our big clients, who often deal with larger agencies that they find to be less responsive. But I think that's an ongoing challenge. And part of a post-pandemic environment where there's a lot of uncertainty for all of us, a lot of change, there's a lot of risk, but there's a huge amount of opportunity as well. So I think continuing to remain optimistic and see it as opportunity and being ready to adapt is key.
Yeah, I think someone said to me many years ago at the start of my career, you don't go into this industry unless you're an optimist, and I've hung by that one for a long, long time, which sort of leads me to my next question, because I mean, part of what this series is about is letting everybody know that you guys have joined and learning a little bit about your business. But I'm also very conscious that we as a group have a lot of people starting their careers within our various agencies, and I over my time certainly picked up lots of little pieces of wisdom and advice that I keep by me these days. And I was wondering if either of you two had a sort of piece of wisdom that you would like to pass on to anybody starting their career now, maybe as a junior creative in the design studio or as an account exec, what would, one thing that you could sort of pass on and say, that's what you need to think about?
For me, it's flexibility is what I would call it. I think, particularly when you're joining a new agency, you're going to be employed for your key core, your key skill set. Of course you are, but particularly in small agencies like us, we need people that can flex and are proactive and keen and willing to learn, supplementary skills. So we've got people that joined us as kind of, okay, the product design or the packaging or branding, etc. But they'll get involved in some of the strategic thinking and research, and they'll dabble in a bit of semiotics, and they'll even sort of new business activity, things that you're not taught at uni or whatever. But if you've got the mindset to flex and you are proactive and keen to learn, for us that's massively important, because our business is changing at a rapid pace, as Simon just mentioned, and we need people that can do likewise and move with us. That would be, I think, a key sort of benefit to any employer.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, keep learning.
Yeah.
It's something which we try and structure. I mean, both Miles and I have been in other agencies where there hasn't been such a structured commitment to continuous improvement, if you like, both as a business but also as a set of individuals. So yeah, we have an annual program that everyone goes through, which I think is pretty good for an agency of our size, where we look at the strategic plan for the agency and we align everybody to that, but we also invest in professional development for the individual as well, and we put some budget behind that, just to make sure that we're all continually growing and sort of developing the skill set that we need to stay relevant, and deliver the service the clients need. So yeah, keep learning, I think, is another key one.
No, that's great to hear. And as I say, someone once told me, curiosity is a muscle, make sure you flex it, and I think that sort of dovetails very nicely. Gentlemen, I'm conscious of the time, but I just wanted to round out by saying a thank you. But if any of our colleagues watching this want to reach out and have a conversation with you and learn a little bit more, especially about the design philosophy that you have, or perhaps as a client opportunity, what's the best way to get hold of you guys?
I mean, firstly, any time. I mean, our contact details are on the website. They can come through you, obviously, Paul.
Yeah.
But yeah, me and Simon are always around, and other senior members of the team always happy to talk at whatever level, whenever. And of course, if if that conversation goes well, they might be invited on aboard the cheese barge.
We insist on a face-to-face over cheese, don't we, Miles? At meeting 2.
I've heard about the infamous cheese barge from Claire, so I'm yet to join you, but I look forward to doing so.
We'll get you on there. So yeah, at any time, we're happy to discuss with anybody.
Great, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time, and welcome again to Mission Partners. And we are really looking forward to working with you. And it's been great chatting. So thank you.
Right.
Thanks, Paul.
Nice to be with you. Cheers.
Bye bye.